What's going on, everybody? It's Clint with the DieHardMMA Podcast, brought to you by Pub Sports Radio. We are talking UFC Vegas 33, overs, unders, how long will these fights last, taking another angle at betting these things, trying to make you some additional cash. Let's get straight on into this week. We've got a pretty big card, even though we've already lost a couple of fights, but there's plenty left to talk about. The bout order has completely changed from Monday's podcast, starting off the night. We've got a preliminary fight, Phil Rowe taking on Orion Kosuke. Total here is set at 2.5. The over 2.5 is plus 105. The under 2.5 minus 125. This is a spot where I would have to look at the under. Now, Philip Rowe is a guy that has been to a decision a decent amount, but he is very, very dangerous, and we have not seen the best version of Philip Rowe, in my opinion. Orion Kosuke, I do want to thank everybody in the comment section of my video from Monday. I said that this version of Kosuke goes to decision, and that was my bad. My brain said that he went to decision. He's been to round three different times, but he has finished his opponent in the third round every single time. So he actually has not been to decision. So that is my mistake. And the fact that he can finish his opponents late when they tend to slow down and wear out, that's something that you look for, especially when we're talking about a total. He never stops looking for that kill. He never stops looking for that finish. So if he has Philip Rowe hurt, if he has Philip Rowe tired, he will look to get him out of there. Now, with both these guys leveling up, with both these guys showing improvements, both with decent cardio, there's a chance that this thing squeaks over. There's a chance this ends at the very last couple of minutes there in the third round, or maybe even it gets to the judges' scorecards. Honestly, there's a lot of questions with both these guys. Still two very, very unproven, untested commodities. Not one I'm planning on betting, but I think I would side with the violence on the under 2.5 at minus 125 if I were going to play it. Next up, we got a bantamweight fight. Ronnie Lawrence taking on Trevin Jones. Jones has been absolute dynamite since he's gotten to the UFC. He's got big power bombs. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's taking on Ronnie Lawrence, who's got excellent footwork. He's got great speed, good timing, lots of grappling, lots of takedowns, spans those chain grappling attempts. Total once again set at 2.5. The over is minus 120. The under is plus 100. So another 2.5 spot here with a pick'em price tag. And I'm kind of feeling, it's another spot where you side with your fighter, you side with your total. Over 2.5 is going to side with Ronnie Lawrence and the grappling. The under 2.5 probably sides with Trevin Jones and him getting some kind of a finish. But Trevin Jones was not a huge finisher up until his last couple of fights. This guy is more than capable of going a 15-minute distance. So because of that, I think both guys actually can have success, even if this fight gets extended. I'm going to say the over 2.5. Over 2.5 at minus 120 is the way that I'll look here for the second fight of the night. Women's strawweight match, Jin Yu Frey taking on Ashley Yoder. Total set at 2.5. The over is massively juiced, minus 390, plus 320 on the under here. And yeah, these women's fights just generally don't get finished. Yoder, she doesn't lose by finish. She doesn't finish anybody. We have seen that time and time again. Kind of the same thing with Jin Yu Frey. She smothers people. She's got that grinder mentality. And unless she just finds herself in the perfect position, she's not going to put anybody away either. I could see Yoder being taller, longer, and maybe getting a compromising position on Frey and getting some kind of a submission for the first finish of her career. But we have no evidence to support that. That's just one of those sneaky, weird little feelings I've got, so I wouldn't even say there's value on the plus 320. I'd be looking at the over, definitely not betting this one, definitely not parlaying it, nothing like that. This is a complete stay away fight. A lot could go wrong, a lot very strange could happen when these two get in there and start scrambling around the way they do. Featherweight fight up next, Danny Chavez taking on Kai Kamaka, and I'm already on the dog here. I know we're not picking sides, I know we're talking totals, but when I'm looking at someone like Kai Kamaka and the way that he loses it, I think it's because of his bad gas tank. I think he slows down. I think it's because Danny Chavez chops away at that front leg, so I'm thinking a finish happens here. We got a total set at 2.5. The over 2.5 is minus 190. The under 2.5 is plus 165. And I do think that there is some value on that under at plus 165. Now, Chavez is a guy who doesn't have a history of getting finished himself. He does have one single submission loss, and that's not really the game of Kai Kamaka. He will potentially have a size and a grappling advantage, but I don't know that he's the caliber of guy that it's going to take to submit someone like Danny Chavez. So There is the problem for me of needing both fighters to contribute to my unders cashing, so I'm not going to actually be betting this one. But again, I kind of think Chavez knocks Kai Kamaka out, but I do think it will be late, right around that 2.5 minute mark in that third round once he kind of slows down and gets worn out. So probably not touching this one, not even going to bet it. I will say under, but again, that's kind of a bias. It's not actually, it doesn't have the criteria that I usually require to actually make that bet. Lightweight fight, Chris Gruetzemacher taking on Rafa Garcia, and this is maybe the most talked about fight on the entire card this week. Total set at 2.5, over is -130, under is +110. Rafa Garcia is made out of iron. You don't finish this guy. Nobody's putting this kid away. He's got a good gas tank. He can strike with the best of them. He's got a slick grappling game. Chris Gruetzemacher on the other side of this thing, all of his losses have come by finish. If he loses a fight, he gets taken out of the cage. So there's one guy that refuses to die in there, and there's another guy that goes out on his shield. So maybe this one gets to decision. Maybe Chris is a lot better than we expect him to be. Maybe Rafa's not quite as good as a lot of us think he is. But even if that's the case, I don't think Chris is going to beat Garcia inside the distance. I don't see him knocking him out. I definitely don't see him submitting. Garcia probably has a massive grappling advantage here. Not probably, he does, over Chris Gruetzemacher. And if he implements that, it's either grinding away minutes or a submission opportunity. So there's too many ways for this fight to go under. The problem is, like I said, Rafa Garcia is made out of iron. This guy's not going down. So Chris Gruetzemacher will contribute to my under by being questionably durable and potentially shot. Rafa Garcia's got the finishing output to go ahead and give me that. So I'll say the under. I'm going to say under 2.5 at +110, but really it's just Rafa Garcia inside the distance. It's not Chris contributing to that under whatsoever, except by being potentially fragile. Featherweight fight, Colin Anglin taking on Milsic Bagdasaryan. Milsic is a absolute hurricane in the first round. He comes out hard in every single fight. Colin Anglin is a little bit more of a slow-paced fighter, more of a wrestler, explosive karate stylist. Total set at 2.5. The over is -145. The under is +125. Milsic, in the Dana White Contender Series fight he had, really didn't know what to do with himself once he couldn't get his opponent out of there. Really slowed down, but he did show he was able to transition into kind of the long game. Still got his hand raised at the end of the night. So he can go hard in the first round and then continue to fight after that point. But going up against someone like Anglin, who's got that wrestling in his back pocket, I don't know if you're just going to get a ticky-tacky striking match for 2 more rounds after you slow down. Anglin's going to look to put you on your ass. So I think there's a decent chance that Anglin finishes Milsic if he does happen to slow down. And Milsic probably just blows the brakes off of Colin Anglin in the very first round. So the under 2.5 at plus money is the way I'd be looking. +125, I don't hate that spot when both guys can definitely get that finish. Closing out the preliminary card, we've got Nico Montano returning against Yanan Wu. And it's another spot where the total is just over 2.5. -320, under 2.5 is +260. Nico Montano is a very powerful, strong grappler. She's going to have a strength advantage in this spot, so she should use the grappling game. That's kind of what we expect. Yanan Wu, decent striker, decent grappler, not great anywhere. Really fighting for her job here in this spot, so I'm fully expecting Nico Montano to just do whatever she wants to Yanan Wu here in this spot. And the question is whether or not that provides us any type of a finish. Women's fights generally don't get finished, and Nico Montano, not the biggest finisher we've ever seen, but I have a stinking suspicion that she treats this a lot like Miesha Tate did, where she came back after a really long layoff and she took out all of her frustrations on her opponent during that time. So I think if she gets Wu to the ground, she's going to be looking to make a statement. She's going to look for a finish, and a potential TKO evolves here, but it does not meet my criteria, so I'm not betting this +260 on the under, because realistically, Yanan Wu is never finishing Nico Montano unless Montano tries to, do a leg kick and turns into Conor McGregor, snaps her calf in half. I hope she doesn't do that, by the way. Yanan Wu is just not finishing Nico Montano. It's not happening. And Nico Montano is not a fighter that you finish. So there is way too much durability involved. I cannot bet this under 2.5. If you're going to look for kind of what I'm talking about, you just take Nico Montano inside the distance. Kicking off the main portion of the evening, the main card here is Bryan Barberena taking on Jason Witt. And I may have lied. I may have lied when I said that Rafa Garcia was the most talked about fight, because this one actually might be the most talked about fight on the card this week. Total here set at Well, I'm not sure. It looks like 2.5 actually. Total set at 2.5 mostly across the board. Over 2.5 is plus 120. Under 2.5 is minus 140, and it's taken steam. It's down to minus 150, minus 160 in some places. So we all know Jason Witt's chin issues. We absolutely are all more than aware of this guy's durability problems, and we're all really expecting Bryan Barberena to come out and put it on him. So the question is, can Witt get the takedowns, and can he keep Bryan Barberena down for 15 minutes or not? Because Jason Witt ain't subbing Bryan Barberena, and I really don't think Jason Witt TKOs Bryan Barberena unless he is just completely shot after the surgeries that he's been through, which is entirely possible. Lots of questions surrounding this fight, not one I tend to want to have a lot of action on. I'm going to say the under 2.5. I'm going to lean with the public here and say that Jason Witt's chin is just a massive liability. I know he's talked about making a lot of changes, but I'm not sure how much those are going to help him at this stage of his career. And I think Bryan Barberena is a guy that the way he pushes the pace, he's never going to give up on himself. He will continue to get up even if he gets taken down, and I don't know that Witt can keep this guy down for 15 minutes. And when Barberena gets back up, I think he just has his way with Jason Witt on the feet. So I'm going to say Bryan Barberena gets the knockout. But again, I mean, I guess in this case, Witt does have the submission offense. We have the broken Bryan Barberena helping us out for the under 2.5. So it's not just Bryan Barberena inside the distance. You can actually look at that under 2.5 in this particular spot. Flyweight fight, Ryan Benoit taking on Zarrukh Adashev. And this is one that originally was supposed to kick the card off, finds itself on the main portion of the evening now. Total set at 2.5. Over is minus 170. Under is plus 150. And yeah, I kind of think this fight's going over. Zarrukh Adashev is a guy that's been really evolving in front of us. He got to the UFC way too quickly. Not a well-rounded enough martial artist, but he's getting there. The fact that he fought well with Sue Majiri and didn't get KO'd in that fight, he knows exactly what he's doing on the feet. If you kickbox with this guy, he is not a fish out of water. He knows how to handle himself in there. Ryan Benoit is not the most talented kickboxer in the world. Yes, he drops bombs. Yes, he's got a heavy left hand and a big left body kick. But outside of that, he's nothing special. I actually think Zarrukh Adashev is the much better striker of the two if we're going pure on the feet styling. But Ryan Benoit has a big advantage in the grappling here. He's also a much bigger person. So I think if he really wants to go to the grappling and use that ground game, he can take Zarrukh down. That means the submission is available. This is one of the sketchiest fights on the card that's full of sketchy fights. I don't want to bet this one. I'm going to say the over 2.5. I'm going to say these guys go to war. I'm going to say Ryan Benoit probably uses that grappling but can't quite get the finish on the mat. But again, don't bank on that because there's a lot that could go wrong in this fight. Zarrukh Adashev could turn up and be a whole new monster after getting some work in the ground game. Ryan Benoit could land one of those big left bombs, and we've seen Zarrukh Adashev knocked out a couple times already, so don't count anything out. This fight absolutely could get finished, but I've got that sneaking sensation it's going over. Welterweight fight up next. Niklas Stolze taking on Jared Night Train Gooden. And this is a short notice replacement. We lost Munir Lazez. Gooden is stepping up here to fill in. And this is a guy that is incredibly hard to finish. Total set at 2.5 rounds. Over is minus 185. Under is plus 115. Gooden is more well-rounded than people give the guy credit for. He's on an 0-2 run in the UFC. And I actually really like everything I've seen from him. And believe it or not, this guy's under 30. He looks like he's a little worn, like physically speaking. You'd think he's like 32, 33, something like that, but he's not. He's actually got a lot of room that he could still be making improvements and get better here. Niklas Stolze, he's a flow striker on the feet. This guy knows how to play chess out there, and I expected him and Munir Lazez to really have a high-level striking chess match. He's got a sick guillotine on him, a tight squeeze when he jumps for it, underrated grappling does Niklas Stolze, but he also has kind of questionable takedown defense. He's willing to play off of his back, so I could see Jared Gooden actually going in there and using kind of a wrestling-heavy game plan and extending this fight, but then you got to watch out for that choke of Stolze. So when they're on the feet, I think Gooden's durable enough to hang in there. He could put Stolze out himself because he's got some big bombs, but I think these guys probably are comparable durability-wise on the feet. I don't see either of them necessarily getting that finish, and outside of something fluky or Stolze maybe landing a choke or something along those lines, I think this one goes over. I'm going to say the over 2.5, but they're both offensively capable enough. I really don't want to bet it. So minus 185 to the over 2.5 is what I'll say, but I'm not laying that kind of a price tag. We got a women's strawweight fight. Cheyanne Buys taking on Gloria de Paula. Buys is 5-2. De Paula is 5-3. So very, very low-level women's MMA here. Fight scratching right near the top of the card. Over 2.5 is minus 355. Under 2.5 is plus 295. Gloria de Paula's got kind of a point-style striking game. She is capable of knocking people out. However, Cheyanne Buys is a mean chick with a lot of durability. I don't see her going out on her shield or anything like that on the feet in this fight. And then when they go to the ground, Cheyanne Buys probably has a significant grappling advantage. However, Gloria de Paula is someone that is very difficult to put away. So I don't know that I see Cheyanne Buys actually submitting Gloria de Paula. This is another one where, as much as I would love to take advantage of that under 2.5 at the juicy plus 295 line, over 2.5 just makes more sense. I think this one's going the judges' scorecards, and again, not one I'm betting. There's not a lot of good totals this week, folks. I do apologize. Bantamweight fight, co-main event. Kyung-Ho Kang taking on Rani, Yahya. How did this one end up being the co-main event? This card is a mess. Total 2.5. Over 2.5 is minus 145. Under 2.5 is plus 125. And Kyung-Ho Kang is a fighter that fights extremely close with absolutely all of his opponents. Decent grappler, nice long jab, decent striking, generalist, doesn't do anything exceptionally well. Rani Yahya, he power strikes his way into range, grapples his opponents as much as possible, chains them up against the fence, trips them down, gets them to the floor, looks for those submissions. He's getting older. Both these guys have questionable gas tanks. Kyung-Ho Kang is slowed down massively after grappling for 15 minutes. Rani Yahya tires out after about 6 minutes. So there's a lot of ability for either of these guys to get this thing done late if they have made improvements to their gas tank. The problem is we haven't seen Kyung-Ho Kang in a very long time, and Rani Yahya looked like an all-star his last time out. So I have big questions about this fight. Something tells me the under 2.5 is going to hit. I think that Rani Yahya is capable of choking absolutely any man at bantamweight out if he gets the opportunity, but I do think that his gas tank is a problem, and the much younger Kyung-Ho Kang might be able to TKO this guy if he's forced to fight for 15 minutes and gets extended there into the third round. So I'll say under 2.5 on the co-main event. Middleweight fight for the main event here. Uriah Hall taking on Sean Strickland. Total is set at 4.5 rounds. It looks like 3.5 rounds. I am corrected. The over 3.5 is minus 105. The under 3.5 is minus 115. So they're expecting it to be about halfway through the fourth round that someone finally finds a finish. And I completely agree with that. I'd say the under 3.5, the under 4.5, that's probably kind of the way that I would look here. Sean Strickland just absolutely gets in the face of his opponents, and he does not let up. This guy is massive output, lots of boxing, lots of combos, fights, it throws like 60%. He's never looking for that big knockout bomb. He just kind of lets it evolve and constantly peppers you in the face. Now, if he smothers Uriah Hall, we've seen Hall knocked out before, so I think that's a very good game plan. I think it's an opportunity for him to get a big highlight reel KO over somebody like Hall, and Hall needs room. He needs to explode. He's always looking for one big shot, one big counter, and Sean Strickland is going to be standing right in front of him, giving him that opportunity. So the fact that Sean Strickland's one finish loss came by knockout, spinning heel kick, the fact that Uriah Hall's been knocked out 4 times, I think these guys are a match made in heaven for someone to get hurt. I think violence is the way to go. Under 3.5, under 4.5. Fight doesn't go the distance. I do think we see a longer fight. I do think it gets into like the third or maybe the fourth round, but I don't see this thing going the distance because eventually someone's going to get hurt. And with the pace that Sean Strickland pushes, Uriah Hall's a guy that we've seen look for the exit before. He could absolutely quit on himself out there, and if he doesn't quit on himself, if he has really turned a corner, if he has really upped his game, then he's going to knock Sean Strickland out. And I think that one of these guys is going down before the end of the third round. That's the total takedown, folks. That's the full breakdown. I will be back tomorrow for the post-weigh-in show, the undefeated post-weigh-in show. Make sure you smash that like button here. That's the best way that you can support Pub Sports Radio. Another way you can support Pub Sports Radio and myself is head over to the shop, pubsportsradio.com. Get yourself a Die Hard MMA t-shirt, whether you get the classic logo, the Fireball and Popcorn, or one of these badass Die Hard Stimulus Check shirts. We definitely appreciate the love. We'll see you soon. Good luck. And let's roll.